Okay, so I wanted to give a quick introduction to the blogging, actually more of a kind of a blogging field trip. Just give you a couple of pointers on some of these sites that I discuss here, and hopefully make this a little more tangible than just something you read about. So first I'm going to start off with Technorati. So this is, I'm not sure this site's getting better or worse. In some ways I feel like it's not moving as quickly as it should. It's getting to be so full of stuff it's hard to use as maybe it was in the past. But let me point out a couple of things on here. So they do this kind of new thing, fire, kind of letting you know what's hot and what's not so hot. I have found several useful things when I get into the popular links on top here. And again, they're going to give you this recent stuff. You're going to get a lot of Paris Hilton and Sopranos and that kind of things. But also, since there's such a large search engine for blogs, they have several mechanisms for identifying popularity and what they call authority too, which has to do with how many people link back to their site, so people feel they're important. And again, the top few here very tech heavy, but once you start working your way down to get into this long tail, and we're not get too deep into the long tail here, but you can start to see official Google blog. You're going to see things like Mashable is the one that caught my attention. They had some interesting posts that I found of significance as they relate to the Web 2.0 class. Of course, social networking is a similar mantra in the sense that it's about people getting together and making connections. And I found several interesting things here. And then, of course, it's not with the blogs. It's not just the post that's of interest. It's all the connections that you make related to. So most blog posts. I'm going to go back to the top of this one. Sorry. They're going to have a comment section too, so you can click on the comment and see what others have to say about it. And then, of course, the really popular posts and the interesting posts that'll turn into somewhat of a dialogue as well. Okay, Technorati also has some pretty significant search functions. Now, unfortunately, this regular one here I haven't found as helpful as the advanced search. And in here, then you can say I want to look in all blogs and blogs that people have tagged a certain way, or blogs that are in a certain directory. And tags like K12 can often be helpful because it's specific enough where it's not going to be used by a whole lot of others, and it's something we kind of is unique to us, and therefore we're more likely to get things that are of interest to us. So I don't have any specific ones to pull in here, but I thought I'd just kind of give you a quick little run through of how you might utilize something like this. Okay, next up then, I wanted to show you how we can take some of these things, and this is less like a blog, but similar in the sense that it has these RSS feeds, or really simple syndication, or others have called it rich site summary. I'm not sure which one came first here, but what's nice about this, you'll see this often in orange buttons, and also in my browser it shows up top as an orange button as soon as there's one of these RSS feeds. And then we can use these feeds. You click on it, it's not going to give you anything real helpful. It's going to be a strange looking page, but you can take that and then add it to something like Google. I have a Google page that I'm going to show you that will use these. So I'm going to add to my Google home page. I'm not sure which page. Oh, and it took me right to it. Okay, which I was going to take you to anyway, but we can close it now. Okay, so here's my Google home page now. These are pretty slick. Google impresses me quite regularly. And here you see they added then a section to my home page that has recent articles from the education section of the Washington Post. And I can expand that, and it's going to give me a little teaser about what's going on, and then if I want to read the full article, I can go in there. So this whole page is actually built by these types of things. I could do the same with a blog. In fact, lifehack.org, you may have noticed, was one of the blogs, top 100 blogs by Technorati. So, Dig, which I'll show you in a moment here too. But I can add all sorts of little things in here. Fitness tip of the day, to-do lists. This ties directly in then with my Google Calendar, which I use as my main calendar. I can add events through here, or I can just go straight to it, etc. Oh, and I'll show you one other thing I think is kind of interesting. So I can, obviously, personalizing these things becomes the mantra of Web 2.0. It's less about what others think I should be seeing and more about what I want to see. So you can do all sorts of strange things, like have your weather section include Loveland, Colorado, Henderson, Nevada, and Hastings, Nebraska. Well, obviously Henderson, the reason I have that's pretty obvious. Hastings is where I grew up, and my parents still live there, or in that area, so I'm always curious what that's like, and of course go back there regularly. And then my wife's parents live in Loveland, Colorado, and it looks like they're looking for some thunderstorms there too. Let me show you a couple more things with this Google page. Blogs certainly are one portion of it. I have the fun section here. But you really come up with a lot of interesting ways to aggregate information that is of direct interest to you. And let me just show you one way they do it. So let's say I wanted to add a whole new tab, and I want a section strictly on teaching. So I click Add Tab, and we'll do Teaching. And this is Google's become somewhat famous for this I'm feeling lucky button. Remember, their initial search page had this option where you could just click that and they would try to identify the top site, the one that was going to be most helpful to you. Now I'm going to do this with a teaching tab, and they say, hey, we'll try to add stuff to this based on what you call it. So I'm going to call it teaching. And the result is looks like some pretty interesting things, and I think maybe they're onto something here. So Teacher Magazine, news and information for teacher leaders, teaching and learning on the web, teaching pre-K through 8, a specific search for methods. Obviously these could all be awful sites, but at least their initial attempt looks pretty promising. So that's a little bit on Google's. Let me show you one more site that as in terms of podcasts it does too, but blogs, this is where I often find myself identifying these really interesting blogs. Dig is a site, what do they call it? They call it a social news site where anybody can contribute stories to the site. And then what people do is they look at the stories, and if they think it's worthwhile, then they'll dig it. That's this dig button here, and this shows you how many digs there are. So what you end up with is this listing of stories that ultimately get ranked in terms of importance. So here's the top new stories in technology right now, but you can also go into hardware, you can do science, and they'll have health and environment, the world and business, etc., etc. And I found this to be a good way to identify some interesting blogs. And this is another one that once you get into it, not only will it take you to the actual site, this one wasn't necessarily a blog again, but I wanted to go back to when they have a story, they're also going to have comments on the story. So you can read the comments. You can actually blog on the story itself. So I could put this over on Web to Teach and add additional information to it. We'll come back to this when we get to podcasts. I will show you maybe videos really quickly because they have an educational section for the videos. And this is where I found some of these things that I've shared with the class. Regarding the TED Talks are up here. So if I do that on my search, TED Talks, I'll come up with some of the more popular TED Talks. So if I click on like the Malcolm Gladwell one, oh, it's going to take me directly to it. I didn't want to do that. I want to go back to Okay, I figured out my error there. I did a search within videos where they actually have TED Talks in podcasts because they're regularly distributed. I guess they consider that the podcast one. So, but once I go in here for podcast results and I get into TED Talk, uh, not only does it give me a listing of all of those that have been released, but it also gives me a listing on the right hand side of the most popular episodes within there. And you'll notice the one that I shared with the class um, a few days ago. And this is how I kind of knew. I have watched many of these though. They're actually quite good. Very interesting. And we'll watch this one with Jimmy Wales, one of the founders of Wikipedia. Very interesting things. Um, Malcolm Gladwell, you may recognize from the book The Tipping Point, and the subsequent one, Blink. Good stuff though, and it's another place where you get lots of users contributing, and your ability to identify quality content goes up. It's also got the downside too, and you may have caught a few of them as we went through here. It's difficult to make these incredibly tight and filtered, and I know that's certainly issues for educators that we have to be wary of. But things like this, um, if you just block these out as a blanket thing that can't come into schools, you really restrict what you can do. In fact, I wanted to point out something in here too. If you're on our site and you're accessing it from, let's say, the local school district, when you get into some of these things, what I'm doing here with videos, for example, this one, I posted that on Google Video and then pulled it in from Google Video. So if the school district has blocked Google Video, I believe they have, then you won't be able to see this portion here. It just comes up blank. And this comes up in a lot of things. So these RSS feeds where it's pulling in information from another site. Many sites now depend on multiple sites to build the page, and you end up with this empty or this incomplete picture of what the site looks like. So, okay, so there's a quick little overview of some of the things that I think are of note when it comes to these two-way, essentially, applications like blogs, and looking forward to um, spend a little bit of time playing with EduBlogs, one that isn't filtered. That's part of the reason that was chosen. There are some others. If the school district isn't a consideration for you, there's I think Blogger is probably one of the best out there instead of EduBlogs. But we'll get into that more in the next section. And I'm going to put up a discussion section for this, so let me know what your thoughts are, comments are. Maybe you could do a video response if you'd like, and I'll post it right next to this. So that is all for now.